it's such a rewarding lifestyle, and there is a way to do it where you can live joyfully and in abundance with community. You do not, and we're never meant to live self-sufficiently. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Roots and Dirt podcast. Today I'm going to be talking to you about self-sufficiency, or more so, why I don't believe that we should be living self-sufficiently. I was going to be walking you through some different changes that I was going to be making on our homestead for this coming up season, how I'm making plans for the garden, what exactly I am planning, just a whole array of things and why I'm doing that. But I actually think it's more important that I cover this first, as that topic will give you a better base for the next topic. So let's dive into this. First, from a practical standpoint, it's nearly impossible to live 100% self-sufficient. There will always be something tying you to either your local community or the world economic system that we have going, right? You may be able to get close, but that would require you to make significant sacrifices along the way. One, you would need to choose to live, and learn to live an entirely different lifestyle. You would need to not consume all of the foods that you're currently consuming, most likely. You would also need to learn to live with much less energy consumption. You would need to learn to live with much less clothing, all kinds of things, right? The sacrifices that would need to be made on your part to live 100% self-sufficient, most people would be unwilling to make. I am unwilling to make them. Not all of them. I am willing to make sacrifices when it comes to not consuming certain foods or, just different things like that, but not for the sake of being 100% self-sufficient. That being said, there are a few sacrifices that you would have to make in order to be 100% self-sufficient. 3 sacrifices that I've learned over the years that I would be completely unwilling to make, and yet still fall into the trap of those things becoming sacrifices at times. The first sacrifice you end up making is community. We were never meant to live outside of community with one another. And when you're doing everything on your own, or attempting to do everything on your own, you sacrifice that community, building into that community, building relationships with other people. I truly believe God meant for us to live in a community with one another. Acts 2, verses 44, let's say verses 44 through 47, says, all the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Along with that, 2 Corinthians 8:14 says, at the present time your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn their plenty will supply what you need. Then there will be equality. As it is written, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Now, a lot of our world today would like to twist those passages into meaning things that they are not trying to say, right? But the reality is that my abundance can help my community and my fellow neighbor, the fellow believer, right? And your abundance, or my community's abundance, can help me in my time of need. It is a heart matter. It's a matter of sharing out of what God has blessed you with, rather than storing it all up for yourself, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you should not be preparing and serving your family. I also believe that we are called to live what I guess I like to think of as like the Joseph mindset, essentially. I do believe that it is wise to provide for your family, and that should come first. No different than if you're in an airplane, you put your own gas mask on first, right? Before you put, or oxygen mask, put that on first onto yourself before you put it on to the next person. You need to supply for the needs of your family so that you can provide for the needs of others. So I don't believe it is someone should just come and take what I have and give it to someone else. I believe that that is something that should come from me to give where I see that need is needed. Our family has been the recipient of that in the past, right? There's been times when my crops have failed and I have needed to receive something from someone else. And then a neighbor will come and say, hey, I have an overabundance of whatever it was. And the Lord blesses me with that. And equally so the other way, right? I can think of it's not even always in the same time frame, right? There was a year when someone's tomato crop or whatever it was at the time had failed, right? But I had an overabundance of that and I could gift that to them. Well, then the next year my tomato crop failed, but a different neighbor, not even the one that was in need before, but a different neighbor had an overabundance of tomatoes and was able to gift and share those to me. So the Lord uses us within our community to provide those needs. It doesn't always necessarily mean it comes directly back from the person that you blessed in the first place, but the Lord knows those who are his, right? And he will provide for those needs. But when you're not in community with one another, how would you know who to contact? How would you know that somebody was lacking in something? You wouldn't, right? You would have to just throw a wild message out there, which is fine. You can do that. But how much better to be able to help those directly around you, right? If we could all do that, we would be in a much better place. So one major thing that you lack when you go fully self-sufficient, if you could even do that, is community. We were meant to live together. And if you're fully self-sufficient and you're trying to do it all by yourself, you don't have time to build community. Let's be honest. And if you've never been in this lifestyle, you wouldn't know. But if you are, then you know that how much time is involved in doing all of the things, right? And it just doesn't make any sense. Not to mention the fact that at some point in time, at least here in Minnesota, the grass is not growing and you will need hay, right? And if you don't have a hay field that you were able to bale, you would need that hay from someone else, whether you're purchasing it or bartering for it. There are things that you will need that you can't provide for yourself, right? We like to bake bread. I am not growing my own wheat and making my own flour. Could I choose to sacrifice that and not have bread and instead choose to grow a ton of potatoes and things like that, and that's what we only consume? Sure, but eventually I'm going to run out of potatoes, right? There's a reason why there were hungry gaps, hungry seasons in people's lives. Eventually you will run out of something. And where is that going to come from, right? Hopefully it's coming from your local community or other people who share your values where you can purchase those things. Now, you don't have to look at the scriptures or believe the scriptures to know that this type of lifestyle is desirable, right? That living in community is desirable. And I think that we can all admit that that is a better way to live. The second sacrifice that you end up making when you're trying to live 100% self-sufficient is the sacrifice of your marriage, the health of your marriage, and the health of your family. It seems counterintuitive, right? You're trying to do all of these things that should be building your family's health, right? You're eating better food, you're cooking from scratch, you're raising your meat, you're doing all of these things that are supposed to be making you healthy. But the reality is that stress of trying to do and accomplish all of those things on your own are more detrimental to the health of your family and your marriage than they are beneficial. Overextending yourself into so many different aspects of self-sufficiency ultimately means that you're sacrificing time with your spouse, time with your children that doesn't revolve around work. And in that system, ultimately often resentment and overwhelm grows significantly, right? And that is just a breeding ground for all sorts of other unhealthy things that can creep in. I want to have a good relationship with my children. I want to have a healthy relationship with my spouse. And I want those things. I want my relationship with my husband to model to my children what I hope for them in the future, right? And I want my relationship with them to model what I would hope that they would be able to model then to their children. And overworking everybody to the bone where we have no time for each other, where we're just constantly crisscrossing paths and never spending time with one another is not a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. Lastly, you end up sacrificing your mental and physical health. Your body needs rest. It can only do so much, right? You can only mentally carry so many things. And when you're trying to live 100% self-sufficient, there's just so much. There's so much involved in that you really truly lack time to rest. Creation was built upon the concept of resting at the end of your work, right? Like God created the heavens of the earth and then he rested from his work. The reality is that you often lack the time to rest if you are trying to do everything 100% self-sufficiently. You can run your body into the ground, and many, many, many people who jump into this lifestyle a lot of times out of fear because they see what's going on in the world today. People start talking about tariffs and all these other things, which can be hard, right? The inflation we've dealt with over the last 4 years is insane. The different things that we have encountered over the last handful of years has been just not the norm for most of us. But the reality is that if you're responding to those things out of fear and then trying to take over everything on your own, you will burn out. It is impossible not to. I'm not saying that you can't make a large dent in the things that you provide for your family. We do. We make a large dent. We significantly supplement our income by what we produce. That being said, we are not anywhere near self-sufficient and never desire to be. Now, I'm not saying that you should be lazy, right? Our world likes to take the concept of not overworking yourself to the other extreme where now you don't need to work at all, right? Everything should just be given and provided to you. And that's just a bunch of BS if we're being honest, right? It feels good to work. We were created to work, but we were also meant to rest. I spent the last year and a half ruthlessly eliminating things from my life. And no, I did not become a minimalist. I don't know if anyone in the homesteading lifestyle could become a minimalist. The amount of things, I can't even say that word right now, but the amount of things that you need to accomplish the goal that you are aiming to accomplish is a little bit crazy sometimes. It's not. It does keep me from purchasing all kinds of other things, right? Like I've learned what is a want and what is a need. But I'm not talking about ruthlessly eliminating things from my life in the physical sense. I am speaking more towards the eliminating things from my life that I was doing that I no longer am doing. Well, I will go into the depths of this in another upcoming podcast. There are some basic things that I've learned that I think are worth considering. Now, again, it is impossible for me to separate my faith from this process. So do know when I say I am considering these things, that means I am consulting the Lord and gleaning his input while I'm making decisions. I'm seeking his wisdom. But there are questions that you should be asking yourself regardless of your faith. The first question is, what are the things in my life that are most important that I am responsible for? These could be things like, for example, in my life, I am responsible for keeping my home functioning, right? Like that doesn't mean that my children don't help, that my husband doesn't help, but ultimately I am the keeper of the home, right? So I am the one making sure that people are fed. I am the one making sure that the house isn't a complete disaster. I'm the one making sure that everyone's jerseys are ready for their games the next day, right? And again, I am receiving help with those things, but it's the responsibility of it is still mine. The second question that I ask myself is, what am I doing that is taking away from my ability to manage those things well? The third question that I ask myself is, does said thing bring value to our family's life, or does it take away from the value of our lives? Another question that I ask myself is there a way to gain said thing if I still feel it is something that our family needs? Is there a way to gain that through my community where I'm not having to produce it myself? To go along with that question is there a way that I can barter for that item? For instance, last year I was able to pick the raspberries of a local community member, right? And because of that, I offered to grow plants for him out this year, right? I'm not growing plants for everybody. That's one of the things I have eliminated. However, I am bartering, in a sense, those plants for the ability to pick his raspberries. We will go through the details of a lot of those questions and how I work through them in an upcoming podcast. But one last question that you should always ask yourself is this decision that I'm making driven by fear? Fear is not of the Lord, right? So if I am making this choice because I'm really scared of the upcoming tariffs that might be coming, or the economy has been awful for the last 4 years and who knows what's going to happen next or who's going to do what, and I need to be prepared for that. I can't rely on so and so. There's truth in that, right? I do believe that you should never be placing your faith and your home's security in the government or whatever it might be. That's just silly, right? God said, "Are you sure you want a king?" And we said yes, and now I'm just thinking he's like, yeah, that was not a great idea, was it? He even says that in scripture. So I think that it is unwise to be placing your security in those things, but it is also unwise to do things out of fear. And ultimately, your peace and your security and contentment will never come from the efforts of trying to be self-sufficient and self-sustainable. They need to come from the Lord. That is ultimately the only place that you will find complete contentment and peace and security, right? Because in the blink of an eye, your animals could die from some random disease, right? Or your entire crop could flood out like ours did last year. We had no cabbages, no broccoli, no kale, no cauliflower. We didn't have any brassicas at all because simply because of how storms came and floodwaters landed, it just happened to be that that's where those crops were, and I just didn't have any, right? So you can't place your faith in those things, because if you do, you will fall. You will not find peace. You will not find contentment. You will become discouraged and you will give up. And it's worth sticking it out, right? It's such a rewarding lifestyle, and there is a way to do it where you can live joyfully and in abundance with community. You do not, and we're never meant to live self-sufficiently. So I hope that this brought some new light to this process for you. I hope that it brings a little bit of relief, knowing you don't need to do it all, and that those who are being successful in the homesteading world are not doing it all, nor do they desire to do it all. And that is good, right? That is good and healthy. I hope you'll continue with me on this homesteading journey that we're on, that you're on. We can build community even in the comments section. So be kind to one another. I hope you will join me for the next Roots and Dirt podcast.